Welcome to Coffee with Mr. IoT, a weekly chat with Robert Schmidt, Deloitte's chief futurist, and the builders, dreamers, founders, and wild children of the IoT universe. This podcast can also be viewed on the Coffee with Mr. IoT YouTube channel.
Hello, my name is Robert Schmidt. I am Deloitte's chief IoT technologist, also known as Mr. IoT. Welcome to another coffee chat. Today with Nishita Henry, our Chief Innovation Officer. Welcome back, I have to say. We're doing this for the second time. Thank you for joining.
Yes, thanks for having me back. A little bit different this time, but still just as good.
Yeah, last time we sat together and recorded sitting next to each other. We can't do it this time. But I think actually I've done this now, a few of them. I get a lot of good stuff out of it. I really enjoy it to still meet with people. It kind of makes my day. So Nishita, last we talked was a year and a half ago. We were actually in Vegas at one of the big conferences, and today we are working from home. Lots of things have changed. What are some of the things around innovation that really stick out for you when you think of the change that's going on right now?
Yeah, I mean, talk about change and talk about necessity having to further accelerate innovation. When we last talked, we were in person, we were flying around the world. We didn't give a second thought to trying to virtualize. And now with COVID and the restrictions on being together and traveling, it's certainly increased and accelerated a lot of things. One, it's accelerated the future of work, right? We've proven we can work virtually and very successfully, overnight, in fact. Number one. Number two, the supply chains have been completely disrupted. For those of us who try to find flour at our grocery store, we know that it's a treasured jewel when it does appear. From the medical systems and medical supplies, trying to make sure the right equipment's in the right place at the right time has certainly become, a challenge. And it's actually just illuminated the challenges we've always had in our supply chain to be able to adapt and be flexible. And lastly, we as humans are just changing in the way we interact with people and what our levels of expectations are for that interaction. From our children who are having to distance learn in school, to adults who have to then, get their own physical therapy and mental health services online. So a lot has changed, and innovation is certainly helping us to make sure that we can keep up with the times.
So change is such a personal topic, I find. It's such a it's as much an emotional topic as it is a technology question. How have you seen the change happen in these times, right? It's such a different time for change. Are people more willing to change? Is change more impacted by what's surrounded by us? How do you see the emotional side of this with your clients and our clients, and even in your life?
I think when it first started, there was life's going to go back to normal in a few weeks. I don't really have to adopt some of these new ways. It'll be fine, to a realization that this might be our new normal for quite some time, and that forcing people to change, right? Whether it's us ourselves just fully moving to Zoom and saying, that's it, we're not doing in-person big meetings and we can move it all to Zoom, and we can figure out how to do, 1,000-person meetings on Zoom to 2-person meetings on Zoom. And we, did it in a very, very short order. I think that different industries have adjusted differently, right? The restaurant industry is unable to open, have had be forced to move into that takeout and carry out mode, which has changed the way, they have employees in their building. It's changed their menus. It's changed the way they've had to, source supplies. I was just listening to the Daily podcast, who interviewed a restaurant owner down in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, talking about how they've been trying to make ends meet through a carry out business, but their suppliers can't get the same supplies to them, and they have to go to a different place for the food, which costs a different amount, and therefore changing their economics, right? So everything from, what you eat to where it's sourced to how much it costs has been impacted. And, that change has been hard on many people, frankly, and mostly for those who can afford it the least. And so I think it's incumbent on us to help people and help supply chains move more efficiently, help people have access to the goods and services they need in the most economical manner possible. A lot of our clients are struggling with the financial impacts of this, and having to deal with cost cutting measures, and which is, by the way, accelerated change in the form of their infrastructure. They used to do everything on-prem, and now they're like, okay, maybe cloud isn't so bad, and I really do have to move there because it is going to cut my costs in half, and how am I going to do that? And so for those still resisting that change, this has forced them to think things differently.
It's funny, right? You talk about restaurants. This is probably one of the things that I miss the most. Sort of like taking this one time where I can say to myself, let's just go out and have dinner, and we don't need to cook. And now we get takeout, and then we sit outside in our car and eat the dinner outside, and that's our takeout, or we take it to the beach or something like this. So I miss that sort of change in scenery the most. What do you miss the most from the before, and what are things actually that you really appreciate, you personally, that's coming out for you?
Yeah, I agree with you. I miss the restaurants. I miss sitting down with a nice meal and conversation. I miss friends. I miss real in-person conversations. It's funny, this weekend, we decided to expand our quarantine bubble to my sister and her family. And so they came for Memorial Day weekend, and they came Thursday night. And the funny part is just them being there one night, we're like, what do we do now in person? We forgot how to interact without texting or being online with each other. And so we had to get reacquainted again on how to actually behave in person. And it was really funny, the changes and the subtleties of real in-person interaction to actually online interaction. And so I definitely miss the people aspect. I miss my kids going to school, honestly. I love them dearly, but this homeschooling thing is hard. And I'm lucky because they're 10 and 13, so they are relatively self-sufficient. But they miss their friends. They miss that interaction, and I think we're all going to learn to appreciate that a whole heck of a lot more once we're through this.
It's so funny, right? We decided, I don't know, 2 weeks ago that we gonna interview our cleaning crew in detail if we can let them into the house. And so we decided we let them in. And so her and her partner came in and they started cleaning the house. And then we decided, well, we could have them over for dinner. So we had them over for dinner. And then after the dinner, we hugged them goodbye because by the time they had cleaned the house and we had dinner with them, it didn't really matter anymore. And I said to my wife, this was the first person I hugged in 7 weeks. That was pretty
Too
so,
funny.
what are the things that you actually take out of this that are good things for you? I mean, I know, I don't want to sort of like I don't know, I don't want to minimize what's going on. At the same token, I find, for example, I see people more on video and actually relate with them, like instead of being on phones with them, particularly at work relations. What are the things that you find, the little and the big things that you actually finding good in this change?
Yeah, I mean, I think the silver lining is, I was traveling all the time, and I will say, being at home is definitely different. And making sure you eat dinner with your family every night, and read to your kids every night, you don't realize how much you miss until you actually get to do it on a regular basis. So I hope we do keep some of the elements of lowering our travel, being home more, to keep us, to keep that goodness of this time. The other things, I think that we realized you really don't have to get on a plane and travel in order to serve clients or in order to have the big meetings. I think we can make a lot of valuable decisions and valuable contributions from a virtual perspective that I hope we don't lose. At the same time, there are things and there's reasons for doing things in person. So I think it's all a balance. And I think, maybe the world was telling us our balance was a little bit off before COVID and we were a little bit skewed one way to, work, or, excel and succeed and do it faster, do it cheaper, do it better. And maybe there's a better quality of life in here that we can all learn a little bit from. And I hope that we take that away from this.
So let's talk a little bit about innovation. I'm curious to talk about what are we innovating now on? What are the things you're excited about that are going on around innovation for us, both in times of COVID, but also past COVID? What are some of like the big changes that you've seen? We talked a year and a half ago, and we're now a year later. What are the things that excite you today that you're working on in the innovation space?
Yeah, I think there's several things. I think, AI and cloud continue to remain at the forefront. AI, a little behind cloud in terms of true uses and true application. And as we think about how can AI help with the supply chain and retail experience, how can we make sure, that we're using data and information in a way that is most beneficial to the consumer, either by making sure that they have access to the right goods and services, by suggesting the right goods and services that are most beneficial to them, by saying, hey, we know that, you've purchased product X and product Y, so you likely will use product Z, and not for the purpose of just selling more, but genuinely providing more consumer benefit. And I think as we think about AI and we think about data, we've got to think about this as a win-win situation. As, if it's good for me, it's got to be good for you, and vice versa. We're seeing a lot of movement in healthcare, as you would expect, especially on the virtual healthcare front, in terms of making sure that doctors and nurses can treat their patients without having to physically be in person, given the rate of transmission of COVID. So we're seeing a lot more uptake in the virtual health market than we had in the past, and we are partnering with many different companies. One of them happens to be Zyder, another obviously Salesforce, in terms of how we do that delivery in a secure and HIPAA compliant manner, and that allows the best interaction between doctor and patient. We're seeing a lot in the IoT space as we think about movement of goods and services and making sure they get from one place to the other and how they get there. And a lot of innovation around technology in terms of sensors that no longer require batteries to operate, and better use of things like Bluetooth in order to actually provide temporary power and location of devices. So a lot of interesting things that we were seeing. Others around quality control and using computer vision and being able to use computers to be able to detect anomalies in products even before they happen, right? Was the machine setting right? Was it off a little bit? Were the sensors telling you the temperature was a half a degree off? And being able to correct for those things before the product's even developed, so you can reduce the amount of spoilage, which is good from a product cost perspective, but it's also really good from an environmental perspective. So a lot of different changes that we see from an innovation front.
You took my next question away from me because you said cloud and AI, and I was going to ask you, why didn't you throw IoT in there? But you did throw IoT in there. So.
And I'll throw one more in there, Robert. I'll throw blockchain in there. We're actually seeing, customers take even more interest around blockchain, because as we realize the need to share data across organizations that don't share common infrastructure is large. And implementing the blockchain that enables you to have some trust, have a disintermediary body that's not being paid separately, and be able to share only the data you want to share with the party you want to share it with. So blockchain has become interesting. We've been using it in places like pharmaceuticals and manufacturing to share clinical data across various partners. And then we've been seeing blockchain, in the higher education element in order to share credentials from one institution to the other.
I love that you talked about the battery-less sensors. I work with a company that makes battery-less, they call it battery-less computers. And just that concept, and really at this point in time, it's a Bluetooth tag that gets its energy out of RF energy around us, right? We have so much radio waves, Wi-Fi, and so forth, and they use that power to power a chip and then tell us where it is, and tell us temperature, and tell us movement, and so forth. So very fascinating stuff that's coming our way, and it's so cheap that it's going to be in consumer products. And
Absolutely.
So I think that'll really change how we interact with not just makers of thermostats, but it's gonna, or machines, but it's gonna make us as consumers interact with the people who make our sweatshirts, or the people to make big boxes of consumables. So very interesting. So I'm curious in terms of VR and AR. I sit at home. We interact through video and we share screens, but it's still two-dimensional. It's flat, right? And so I have been really thinking about what happens around three-dimensional space. Are we going to be interacting three-dimensionally with each other through augmented virtual reality? May it be an iPad, or may it even be, a HoloLens or a Magic Leap device. What do you think about this? Is this really too Star Trek-y, or is the time we're in right now also going to foster some of that?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. Before COVID happened, I would say AR, VR was definitely interesting and highly used, obviously, in the gaming community. But in terms of enterprise technology, it was still on the edges, right? Sometimes we'd use it for training or some field inspection type of stuff, but I'm not sure that companies found the bang worth the buck. Will that change now that we need to be less in person? You can't send people out places. You can't do training, in person anymore. Is there a better way to engage folks? I still think those are the areas where you'll see some of it happen more than in just an environment where you and I are talking, right? Is it interesting to have a HoloLens on and you and I sit in a virtual world together? It's interesting. Is it effective, or is it any more effective than what we're doing now? I will say I don't know, right? I doubt that, frankly, just
Oh, you doubt
given
it?
the
Okay.
cost. I mean, I doubt, but then again, until that actual experience happens, where I do find it to be more valuable, then we'll all think of it as an interesting technological advancement, but we'll still question the usage of it. And again, I believe AR, VR in the gaming environment is huge. I think in enterprise, it's around training and field service, and we will see that accelerated. But I don't know that it accelerates our everyday life, frankly.
It's so interesting, right? I've done a variety of interactions on video that I would have never thought I'd do it over video than in person. So we had a manager succession program, right, where we teach our managers how to become senior managers. What does it mean? And it was sort of like a 2-day program, 3 days each day, 3 hours each day. And we had serious concerns about people authentically interacting with each other, because so much of what we do is based, you meet someone, you stand in front of them, you get to know them, and then that fosters us sharing something that really matters to us. And gosh, I had seen some really, really deep shares from people coming out of this, and I was mind blown by that. So I have to say, I'm looking forward to trying it out. As you said, I got to see and feel the experience to really know. I want to shift to something that's also AR, VR. I was going to pull up my comic book here. We're actually coming out with another version of this. This is telling the story of Dub Dub in a virtual factory, the virtual factory by Deloitte online. But we've used this comic book, which is a very different concept for Deloitte. Every page is augmented reality enabled. When you put the app over it, it becomes 3-dimensional. So it's not a 2-dimensional book, but it has each page has a story to it. And I know you've worked with comic books. What is it with us and Deloitte doing comic books suddenly? Where does that come from? Tell us about your comic book a little bit, because I think it's both innovative, it's new, and it's so different.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the comic book idea as an engagement mechanism, right? I think it's fun. I think in today's world where people like short bursts of stuff, it's easy to read and easy to consume. But I've been involved with the Ella Foundation, which is an organization focused on getting young girls into STEM fields. And, along with Janet Foudy and Catherine Bannister and Kelly Herod, we each have comic books where we are solving a mystery with a young lady named Ella, who is a school-age girl who is kind of like the Nancy Drew of our times, solving a mystery using science and tech and engineering and math type of skills. And each one of us plays an advisor to Ella during the story when she's solving the mystery. And so mine is called Ella and the Burping Caper. So it's actually really fun. Think about this for age, 10 to 12. They really would think it's funny. And the whole town seems to be burping and they can't figure out why. And so Ella and I go on a mission to go figure out, why are people burping? What's the antidote? And how do you mass produce it to stop it? And then how do you catch the person who is doing it? So it's a really fun story. My girls, who are 10 and 13, enjoyed it as well. And we're hoping to get it out to a lot of local schools.
That's awesome. And when is it coming out?
It's actually out and live. You can go to the Ella the Engineer website, and you can actually see all 4 of our comic books. Actually, I think 3. Kelly's is yet to come. And you can download them for free right from their site. And you can get copies from any of us as well.
Well, I guess we got to take a next step and make Ella 3-dimensional with you and bring her into the virtual world, stick out from the comic book. I guess that'll be our next step.
That would be a lot of fun. Actually, it's really funny. I do have a 3D Ella cutout that's life size. Unfortunately, she's not here with me today, but we just recorded us reading our comic books with Ella so that they could be played online for kids who aren't in school these days. So it's been a lot of fun.
So let's close on something that we always have around this time of the year, Impact Day.
Yes.
And this year we won't have Impact Day the same way. What are we doing this year around Impact Day? Tell us a little bit about it. What do you do that you care about? Because I know all of us have their own little interest in bringing something back.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question. And while we can't necessarily make impacts in big teams in person, I actually think this is the way we should have been going, because I don't think Impact Day is a one day a year type of thing. I think that people want to impact their communities and their, people around them on a far more regular basis. And so I think that opportunities for us to do more skills-based volunteering on a regular basis is a really good thing. And the opportunity for people to really focus on the organizations that matter most to them, right? For me, I am on the board of the Girl Scouts National Capital Region. So it's all of the Washington, D.C. region. It's the biggest in the country, and supporting them to, get more girls into education, leadership opportunities, and really that whole element of being a girl. So G is for go-getter, I for inventor, R for risk taker, and L for leader, and all about getting young girls into experiences that enable them to feel confident and secure from an education and a workplace perspective. So we talk about STEM programming for girls. We talk about making sure that camps have activities that range from the outdoors and the adventure to the educational side of things as well, and mixing those together. And so that's how I give back. I'm also an avid blood donor with the Red Cross. I just did it at the very beginning of COVID and just got my notice that I'm eligible again. And I think those are especially important in times of health crisis as well. So that's my plan, and that's how I give back.
Well, Nishita, thank you for being on the show. I'm going to go and ask you offline now how we can have Ella meet Dub Dub, or Dub Dub become Ella's advisor around something. I don't know if you knew this, but Dub Dub actually is a female too.
I love it.
So maybe we can make another comic book together on that. And with that, I want to say thanks for being on the show again. It's always great to have you. It's great to hear your thoughts on innovation. And maybe next time we do meet in a virtual world as avatars.
That's right. Okay. We've gone from in person to 2D online. The next step is just 3D. So I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks for listening to Coffee with Mr. IoT. To subscribe or to listen to more episodes, search for Coffee with Mr. IoT in your favorite podcatcher, or find us online at deloitte.com/us/coffee with Mr. IoT. To watch the video version of our show, go to YouTube and search Coffee with Mr. IoT.